My relationship with my aunt is complicated. She is my dad's sister, and while most of my family is normal and level-headed, she thinks the world owes her something. I always saw her throw tantrums when she didn't get her way and treat people like they were beneath her. I kept my distance when I could, but family gatherings were unavoidable. Things changed about 3 months ago. My grandmother had been putting money aside for all her grandchildren since we were born, giving it to us when we showed we were responsible enough. Being the oldest, I was first to receive my portion. I used it for a new car, a down payment on a house with my boyfriend of 5 years, and savings. When my aunt found out, she lost it. She thought my grandmother should have given that money to her kids instead, even though my grandmother saved for all grandkids equally. My cousins would get their share when older, just like I did, but my aunt never used logic. My boyfriend and I planned a 2-week vacation with my parents and siblings. The day before we left, we stopped by my grandmother's house to drop off our spare keys so she could feed and walk our dog, Buddy. As we were leaving, my aunt arrived. My aunt started accusing me of trying to con more money out of my grandmother. She called me a disgrace and compared me to my mother, who she called a witch. She said nobody else could see through me. I told her to get lost and said she was just angry because my grandmother wouldn't give her kids money early. I called her self-centered and reminded her that she had no friends, her kids' fathers wanted nothing to do with her, and nobody in the family except my grandmother cared about her. I said goodbye to my grandmother, telling her I loved her and would see her in 2 weeks. My aunt stood there turning red while I walked to the car. My boyfriend was laughing hard. I grabbed him by the arm and dragged him to the car. Later, my grandmother called me, saying I shouldn't have said what I did, but she didn't disagree. She felt she had to love my aunt because she was her daughter. We went on our holiday and had a great time. When we got home, we found our dog missing and half our stuff gone. TVs, DVD player and collection, game console and games, jewelry, clothes, shoes, outdoor barbecue, and more. We thought someone had broken in and let Buddy go, but there was no sign of a break-in and the doors were locked. Someone must have had a key. The only people with keys were my boyfriend, me, my parents, and my grandmother. I called my grandmother, suspecting my aunt. I asked my grandmother when she last came to feed and walk Buddy. She told me she was there the day before around lunch, took him to the park, and left him with plenty of food and water. She asked if something was wrong. I told her we found Buddy missing and half our stuff gone despite locked doors, and I was calling the police. My grandmother called my aunt a witch and said she had been at her house the day before, and again that night. She noticed our keys were in a different spot than where she left them. She told me she was sorry. I was more shocked by my grandmother swearing than what my aunt did. I told her it wasn't her fault and I would call the police. My grandmother said to do it, hoping it would teach my aunt a lesson. While on the phone with police, our neighbor came over with Buddy. He talked to my boyfriend. Our neighbor said he found our dog in his yard and knowing we were away, kept him so he wouldn't end up in the pound. My boyfriend thanked him and asked if he saw anyone at our house besides my grandmother. The neighbor said they were out all day and found Buddy when they got home. He thought my grandmother left the gate open and asked what happened. My boyfriend explained, and our neighbor checked his security camera footage. One camera caught my aunt entering our house with my cousin and some man, loading our stuff into 2 trucks and a station wagon. The police took fingerprints, statements, and the footage. 2 days later, my aunt, cousin, and the man were arrested and charged with breaking and entering and theft. They got bail, and my aunt called me. My aunt yelled at me, calling me a witch and asking how I dared to call the cops on them. I asked how she dared to break into my house and steal thousands of dollars worth of stuff. She said they didn't break in because they had a key and it wasn't stealing because we were family. She said she could take whatever she wanted. She told me to drop the charges and tell the police it was a misunderstanding. She was upset that her son was put in handcuffs and locked in a cell, saying her prince was too good for that. I told her she stole the keys from my grandmother and took things that weren't hers. I said if she returned everything and apologized, we might drop the charges. She cursed at me and said they took what they felt they were owed. She complained that my grandmother gave me money when I didn't need it, while her kids had nothing and deserved better. She told me to drop the charges, said they were keeping everything, and threatened me if I didn't comply. I called her stupid and reminded her it wasn't just my stuff but my boyfriend's too. I was angry. She let our dog go. I told her she was lucky the police got to her before my boyfriend did, and that I hoped they'd all go to jail. I warned her never to call us or come to our property again. I hung up and my boyfriend and I called the police for advice. We got a restraining order to stop her from harassing us or coming to our property. My aunt called my mom to get my parents to talk us into dropping the charges, but my dad told her off and said she wasn't welcome at their house either. Then she tried my grandmother, who told her she was ashamed of her, and my cousin, that we had every right to press charges, and if she didn't return everything, the money for my cousin would go to us to replace everything. My aunt refused, so my grandmother gave us the money. In court, my aunt got 6 months in jail. She had other theft and fraud charges and 2 years probation. My cousin got community service since he was 17. The man who helped got a good behavior order because my aunt told him my boyfriend was her ex and she was moving and needed help with her stuff. After my aunt went to jail, Child Welfare Services investigated her home and found it unfit for her younger children. Her ex-husbands filed for custody and won easily with her criminal record. When she got out of jail, she had lost her children, reputation, and family respect. Now she lives in a tiny apartment, working minimum wage jobs because no one will hire someone with her criminal record. My grandmother still loves her but doesn't trust her. When my aunt tries to cause drama at family gatherings, everyone leaves. Justice comes around eventually. I had been unemployed for 8 months before landing this job at a design studio. It wasn't my dream position, but after sending out hundreds of applications and eating ramen for dinner 5 nights a week, I was desperate. The job market in the early 2000s wasn't great, especially for someone just starting out in graphic design with only an associate's degree and a small portfolio. The studio had a modern, open floor plan, the kind with those half-height partitions that give you the illusion of privacy while actually providing none. Everyone could see and hear everything. I was still in my probationary phase, meaning I was technically a contractor with no benefits, no sick days, and could be let go at any moment. My dog was my best friend. I had adopted her from a shelter 3 years prior when she was just a puppy. She helped me through a bad breakup, my parents' divorce, and the stress of job hunting. She would sit by my feet while I worked on design projects at home, occasionally nudging my leg for pets. She was always there, loyal and loving. That night I had been working late on a project. I had left some small rubber eraser pieces on my desk, something I never thought twice about before. When I finally went to bed, she was curled up on my blanket as usual. I patted her head, told her good night, and fell asleep. I woke up to find her stiff and cold. There were signs of a struggle. My blanket was bunched up. Things had fallen off my nightstand. She had choked on one of those eraser pieces while I slept just feet away. The guilt was overwhelming. If only I had put my supplies away. If only I had woken up. If only I couldn't stop crying. I carefully wrapped her in my blanket and called my boss. I explained through tears that I couldn't come in because my dog had died and I needed to arrange for her burial. My boss asked if I was joking and said it was just a dog, reminding me about our deadline. When I tried to explain further about finding her that morning, my boss cut me off. They told me that since I was still in my probationary period with no sick days, not coming in would be considered a resignation. When I tried to protest, they told me everyone has personal problems and that I needed to man up and do my job. They expected me at work within an hour. The threat of losing my job and returning to unemployment was too much. I showered, trying to wash away the tears, but they kept coming. I left my dog wrapped in my blanket on my bed, promising to take care of her properly when I returned. When I got to the office, my eyes were red and puffy. I approached my boss's desk one last time. I told them I was there but pleaded to go home to take care of my dog, offering to work late the next day to make up for it. My boss said I was already there and should focus on the project and stop being so emotional about just an animal. I went to my desk and tried to work, but the tears wouldn't stop. I wasn't making a scene intentionally, I physically couldn't control it. Every time I thought about my dog lying alone in my apartment, I broke down again. A coworker walked by and stopped at my desk. They asked if I was okay and what was wrong. I looked up with tears streaming down my face and told them that my dog had died the previous night. I described how she had choked on something while I was sleeping and that I had found her that morning. I added that she was still at home wrapped in my blanket because I didn't have time to arrange anything before coming to work. The co-worker asked why I was even at work. I replied loudly enough for nearby desks to hear that. According to my boss, it wasn't an acceptable reason to miss work, adding that they had called it just a dog and told me to man up. His face showed shock, then anger. Throughout the day, more colleagues stopped by. Each time I told them the same story, not hiding my grief or the fact that my beloved pet was still lying dead in my apartment while I was forced to be at work. Word spread quickly. People were giving my boss dirty looks. I could see her becoming uncomfortable as the day went on. Around lunchtime, her boss, the studio director, came to my desk. He asked if he could speak with me for a moment. We walked to a small conference room and he closed the door. The director said he was sorry about my dog. I thanked him. He then told me I shouldn't have had to come in today and that he was giving me the rest of the day and the next 2 days off, with pay, to take care of my dog and grieve properly. I said I appreciated that but pointed out that as a contractor, I didn't get paid time off. The director told me they were making an exception and that when I returned, we would discuss moving me to permanent status ahead of schedule. He said no one should be forced to work on a day like this. When I left the office, my boss wouldn't make eye contact with me. I later heard from my coworker that the director had a stern conversation with her about compassionate management and company values. I took my dog to be cremated and kept her ashes in a small wooden box with her name on it. When I returned to work, there was a card on my desk signed by everyone except my boss. 2 weeks later, I was made a permanent employee with full benefits. My boss was transferred to another department a month after that. My dad's been in rehab for substance abuse issues for a few months, and I've been stuck living with my mom, her boyfriend, who used to be my abusive stepdad, and my entitled half-brother. I've been counting down the days until I could move in with my aunt and uncle, which was finally happening this Thursday. My dad got out of rehab yesterday, which should have been a good day. I saw him driving down my street and we stopped to catch up. He asked if he could use my work phone since his got taken away in rehab. I said sure and went to reset it for him. While I was backing up the phone, I heard knocking at my bedroom door. I told whoever it was that I was busy and they should go away. My half-brother kept knocking anyway. I again refused to let him in, saying no thanks. My half-brother entered anyway. I yelled at him to get out. He pointed at a cup of juice next to my bed and demanded that he wanted it. I refused and told him to go away. I started rolling toward him in my office chair, not realizing my headphones were attached to the chair. The whole computer came crashing down and the tempered glass side panel cracked. I shouted at him, asking what part of get out or go away he didn't understand. I slammed the door in his face so hard that a piece of the door frame broke. There's a window in the frame and my mother appeared in it. She announced that she was going to grab the juice. I refused and told her to go away too. She insisted she was getting the juice no matter what. I gave in, telling her to take the juice. I opened the door and threw it at the floor next to her. She picked it up, it was a big container, and poured it all over my computer, monitors, keyboards, phone, and bed. I instantly wrapped my electronics in a blanket and charged at her to get her out. By then we were in the hallway and her boyfriend came upstairs. Her boyfriend threatened me, saying he was looking at me and would beat me. I dared him to try, calling him a jerk. He escalated his threats, saying I was about to get beaten. I ran back to my room, grabbed a knife from under my mattress, and went back out. I challenged him, saying if he touched me, I'd stab him and claim self-defense. He and my mom ran downstairs. I checked my phone to see if it still worked and tried to dry everything off. I put the broken glass pieces together, then went outside to my dad, who was a couple houses down. I told him what happened. He wanted to hurt my mom's boyfriend but explained he didn't want to go back to jail since he just got out, which I understood. He told me to go back in and get my shoes and a change of clothes since I had juice on me, and we'd go to my grandma's house. When I went back, the door was locked. I knocked. My mom asked what I wanted. I explained I needed my shoes and stuff. She refused to let me in, saying she'd toss my things out the window for me to collect. I insisted she'd just let me in. She accused me of pulling out a knife. I defended myself, pointing out that she had just stood there watching her son threaten me and asking if she expected me to just take it. She denied he threatened me and claimed I was being disrespectful. She tried to close the window, but I kept my arm in it. I told her she wasn't getting the last word and reminded her that she had watched the whole thing. She screamed that she knew what he said because she was right there. I told her she clearly wasn't listening. She said goodbye and declared I wasn't getting my stuff back. She slammed the window and locked it. After that, I noticed her boyfriend's bike outside. I still had the knife, so I sliced the tire and ran back to my dad to tell him. He was angry that the boyfriend was there because he wasn't supposed to be, and if my siblings weren't there, I would have told the landlord. I went to my grandma, my mom's mom, and told her everything. She was furious with my mom. Later that night, I went back to check if my electronics were broken. My mom let me in, but not before lecturing me about respect. In my head, I was just thinking about how I only had to make it to Thursday when I'd move out. Upon inspection, only the computer seemed broken, and I planned to make her pay for it. A few hours later, things got worse. I have severe asthma, and while video chatting with a friend, I started having symptoms of an attack. For the last 2 weeks, my mom hadn't been refilling my inhaler prescriptions, so I'd been without medication. When I got home, I had asked if she had an inhaler, and she said no. Having an attack and believing she still didn't have one, I called 911. The ambulance came and checked me. Only one lung sounded normal. They gave me a breathing treatment, which helped temporarily, but asked if I still wanted to go to the hospital. I said yes because I needed an inhaler for the long term. When they knocked on our door, my mom suddenly found an inhaler. But it was too late. I was already committed to going to the hospital. My mom complained the whole time, accusing me of faking my symptoms. I spoke privately with the doctors about my other health concerns, including bulimia and possible seizures. When they asked if I felt safe at home, I honestly said no. A social worker got involved, and my mom spoke to him in the hallway. About an hour later, after giving me an inhaler, the social worker returned with police officers. They told me I was under arrest. When I asked why, my mom looked at me and kept saying the word payback over and over. It turned out she had filed a false police report claiming I had lunged at her with a knife and tried to stab her, a completely exaggerated version of what happened. I spent 6 hours in a jail cell. My mom had also lied to the police, saying she had sole custody, so when my dad tried to get me out, he was denied. Eventually, my dad confronted my mom and forced her to come with him to get me released. While sitting in that cell, I thought of ways to get back at her. Her boyfriend and his kids weren't supposed to be living with us, so as soon as I got out, I emailed our landlord about the unauthorized residence. The landlord responded quickly, saying they'd investigate immediately. 2 days later, my mom received an eviction notice for violating her lease. The day before I moved to my aunt and uncle's, I overheard her frantically calling friends for a place to stay. No one would take her and her boyfriend. On Thursday, when I was loading the last of my things into my aunt's car, my mom came out crying, begging me to tell the landlord it was all a mistake. I looked her straight in the eyes and said the word payback before driving away to my new home. I'm 36 with 2 boys, 9 and 11. Their mother and I divorced over 3 years ago. We have 50-50 custody, and things settled into a decent rhythm. She remarried 2 years ago to a guy who thinks he's their dad now. I've always been involved in my kids' lives. After we split, I moved close to their school and never missed important events. The ex and I figured out how to co-parent well. We split expenses and keep each other informed. When she's needed me to take the boys during her time, I've always stepped up. Last month, she called me about being deployed overseas for 6 months. I assumed I'd have the boys full-time, but she had other plans. She wanted her husband to take her weeks with the kids, keeping the 50-50 schedule the same. I told her that made no sense. I'm their father, and if she's not here, they should be with me. She said they needed stability, and changing their routine would be disruptive. Later, we met for coffee with her husband. They ganged up on me immediately. My ex said I wasn't considering what was best for the boys. Her husband said the children were comfortable with their routines at their home and I was being selfish. I reminded him I'd been part of their lives since birth, while he'd only been around 2 years. The guy had demands. He wanted me to drive the kids to his house, access their school accounts, and call him if anything went wrong. I offered compromises like letting him visit them at my place or taking them to dinner at his house weekly. Nothing worked. After a week of arguments, I called my lawyer. Our custody agreement states I get the kids full time if she deploys. Plus, California law favors the biological parent in these situations. When I brought this up, they were furious. My ex asked if I was hiding behind legal technicalities. Her husband said the boys would be devastated. I pointed out they hadn't even been told about the deployment yet. She accused me of planning to rip them away from their home. I clarified that I wasn't cutting their stepdad out completely. The husband walked out and my ex followed, calling me selfish. The irony of her husband demanding custody of my children while calling me selfish was lost on her. I haven't told the boys about this. That's their mother's job. My phone blows up with texts from her, him, and her parents, all saying I'm being unreasonable. What parent wouldn't want their kids full time, even temporarily? I'm not trying to cut their stepdad out. He can visit, but I'm their father. When their mother is gone, they belong with me.